He accidentally crossed 400 years later, but found that human beings have long perished. The city is also a wilderness, so he became on Earth, the last human. He followed the navigation. Location of crossing at that time. I found a white bone lying on the ground. Open the collar. On the nameplate of the uniform. Engrave your name. Isn't this the first time he's crossed? Description of bullet hole on skull. He was shot to death. Are there any other survivors on Earth? Time goes back 400 years. All the plants on the Earth are extinct. The oxygen content in the air plummeted to 3%. Thousands of people died from suffocation. Fortunately, it is a technology company. Synthetic oxygen was developed, but long-term inhalation of this oxygen, the body will have rejection reaction of vomiting blood. Until death, it won't be long. Human beings will gradually die out. Mike was just an ordinary worker. That day, the boss suddenly took him to a laboratory and claimed that he could save the world. It turns out that scientists have developed a time machine. They just got it. News from 400 years later, and the content of the message. The requirements are specified. Mike, cross the border. Since humans can send back messages in 400 years, it means they have overcome the oxygen crisis. The boss asked Mike, after 400 years, bring back the antidote. But Mike didn't want to take it. The task of saving all mankind. But I just got home. The wife spat blood in the oxygen mask. She also developed rejection. Helpless, he reached an agreement with his boss. No matter how many antidotes you bring back, wife must be the first to use. Soon, Mike is wearing a special spacesuit. Into the time machine. After a flash of lightning, he landed in a sea of green. Little does one think, the Earth in 400 years. Luxuriant vegetation. It has already recovered its vitality. He followed the navigation. Found the location of the time machine. But I accidentally found my own bones. At first, he thought it was a coincidence. But then, he found the same navigator beside the bones. The same bracelet is still on the bones' hands. It's just that the light is green. He tried to start that old navigator. Last record played. Recording. He had a heated argument with a man. Then came a shot. Who killed himself? Soon it was dark, hungry and tired. He ate a berry. Who knows the fruit is poisonous? Confused, he saw a meteor in the sky. A man suddenly appeared. I gave him a sharp stab. When you wake up again, he saw his good brother Joe. Original. According to the data transmitted by the navigator, found that Mike's blood toxin levels were elevated, so he immediately sent Joe with the antitoxin. They decided to go to the city center, looking for surviving humans, but the scene in front of them made them completely desperate. Future, man will die in a chamber. 2067. All the plants on the Earth are extinct. The oxygen content in the air is reduced to 3%. Thousands of people died from suffocation. Mike and Joe go through the time machine, come to the Earth 400 years later. Little does one think, the vegetation here is luxuriant. It has already recovered its vitality, but the bustling city of the past, but song for the wilderness. Mankind is still extinct. Who was that? 400 years ago. What about the messages sent? After some searching, the two men came to the location of the laboratory. Suddenly, an infrared ray swept through Mike's pupil. The door of the laboratory opened automatically. A line of text appears on the computer screen. Welcome, Mike. Press the start key. Mike's bracelet suddenly tightened, with the blood flowing out. The indicator light turns green. The whole base was lit up instantaneously. A time machine exactly like 2067. Countdown on. After 4 hours, the time channel will be linked again. They can go back to 2067, but Mike didn't think it was that simple. He pulled up the video recording of the experimental base. His father appeared in front of him. It was Mike's father. Developed a time machine. At that time, they received one. News from 400 years later, and the content of the message is, send Mike here. At this time, the base suddenly fell into darkness again. Nuclear energy at the base. The power was cut off because of lack of maintenance for a long time. The two immediately rushed to the nuclear power control room in the city center. They have to get the power back on within 4 hours. Otherwise, once you miss the time channel, they will never go back. Along the way, human remains were everywhere. When passing the school, Mike came into a classroom. The familiar ring made him conclude, this skeleton is my wife. Mike couldn't help crying. Joe came forward to comfort him. This may be the best result. Suddenly, Mike thought this sentence was very familiar. He played back the recording again. It came from inside. The same conversation as just now. After a heated argument, there was a shot. Both of them were startled. But how could Joe kill himself? At the age of 10, Mike and his mother were robbed. Took their oxygen masks. Just as Mike was about to have a rest, it was Joe who took off his mask and saved himself. But time is pressing, so I can't help thinking they can only put down their grievances first. Arrived at the nuclear control room, successfully reorganized the power supply. Distance time channel open. 37 minutes left. Mike calls up his father's video again. It turns out that after father invented the time machine, my boss wants to abandon all mankind, take a group of scientists alone, go through 400 years and start a new life. My father firmly opposed it, but the boss took out the pistol directly. But what she didn't expect was, father is receiving the message. After 400 years of news, he locked the time machine with Mike's DNA. You can't open it until Mike is 20. Joe is the boss. An undercover assigned to him. These years, he has always been inseparable from Mike, just to make sure Mike grow to 20 years old smoothly. In this way, We can travel to 400 years later. Open the time channel for them. Then Joe put the gun on Mike's head because of his mission. Killed Mike when the time channel opened. Kill Mike, but years of affection made him unable to do it. After a struggle, he held the gun to his chin. Here, there are only a few minutes left in the countdown. On the other side, Boss in 2067. It's already in the front row of the time channel. Once the crossing is successful, people in 2067 will be completely abandoned. Critical moment. Mike cut down a bunch of flowers and trees, put it in the time machine. These extinct plants, I'm sure it will make 2067. The Earth is alive again. Then he came to the screen, to the father who just developed the time machine. Sent a message. Send Mike here, because we need to ensure that these plants and trees, it will be transmitted back to 2067. He must be 20 years old, 400 years later. Meanwhile, father of another time and space. The message from the future is received for the first time. It turns out that this dialogue across time and space. The competition was completed by Mike alone. Finish everything. He found that the skeleton at the door had disappeared. Come to the edge of the cliff again. Previously deserted cities have come back to life. He finally changed the past, but it will never be 2067 again. This is a 2020 film. Science fiction films in Australia. The setting is very novel, but at the same time, he also made most of the mistakes. Common faults of time-space crossing films. If the whole crossing is set as a single universe, that is, the past and the future can influence each other. The man sent the saplings back. Finally, the city can certainly regain its vitality, but the bones of the male corpse in the film will not be explained. And send information event. It is both the result and the cause. This leads to the grandfather paradox. Therefore, the setting of the film is parallel time and space. It would be unreasonable for the city to regain its vitality in the end, because the male owner can't pass through to change your time and space. Although the film ended in a bad ending, but on the whole, it is worth seeing.